Yo, I've read some books, as one does, and I want to talk about them and recommend them to you. And instead of doing just like single book reviews like I've been doing, I think I'll just do a little bit where I cluster it up a bit. And yeah, so all the books that I've read recently have been very spooky, supernatural. I'm very much looking forward to the upcoming fall season and Halloween and all that stuff. And basically, for me, it's like Halloween all year long, and I'm just constantly reading some type of spooky book. Yeah, but I want to share them with you, and so I got three, and let's go through them. So the first one is Carmilla. It's this classic vampire book that is, it's known as one of the first vampire stories. There are obviously others that came before it. I think there are two or three notable ones that came before it, though, that I'm aware of, and so I still got to get to those. But yeah, as far as vampire stories go, this one was pretty sick. It has a great atmosphere. It's weird because Dracula is so popular. Like when you think of vampire books, Dracula is the first thing that comes to mind. And I never even heard of Carmilla until just a couple years ago, and it's basically just so completely underrated and kind of hidden under the radar. And I don't know why, because I kind of like Carmilla more than Dracula. They're totally different books. Obviously, Dracula has more of an action focus, and Carmilla focuses more on the way people think and the atmosphere and stuff like that. It's really not as action oriented as Dracula. But yeah, obviously, one big thing about Carmilla that everybody talks about is the fact that this is like the first. It's one of those early books that has queer representation. Probably the first, as far as I'm aware, the first vampire story that has queer representation. It's very bittersweet because the purpose of the queer representation with Carmilla was not in a positive light. It's very much homophobic, saying like, lesbians are parasites on society. But I mean, it's like, I guess you could say that any representation is good representation, but you just have to differentiate between like the author having bad intentions or just the intentions of their time, which is still bad, objectively. But yeah, you could still celebrate that a piece of literature represents queerness this far back, a couple hundred years ago. So yeah, Carmilla's personality was also interesting. She has a lot of agency. She's very goal focused. She's very compassionate, very authentic. She's kind of, you know, she goes back and forth between being very open with her feelings and then also having these moments where she's very cold and distant. And also, at the end of the day, Carmilla is a predator, and she shows that with Laura very well. Having these open, grand moments saying, like, oh, how much I adore you, and we're going to, like, merge together even if it kills you. So on the one hand, you could think of it as like, oh, she's really pouring her heart out, but on the other hand, Laura is kind of like a meal at the end of the day. So it's hard to kind of decipher, are Carmilla's feelings genuine, or is she just, a vampire working her vampire manipulation? I kind of think of it as both, that her feelings are genuine, but also, she's sucking off Laura's life force at the end of the day. So, yeah, overall, Carmilla was a well-made character. She's kind of nuanced. She has goals. She has a past. One thing that I am not the biggest fan of with this book is that towards the end, there's just this long slowing of the pace. There's this long exposition dump and like this story being told inside the story, and that part did drag a little. It doesn't really kill the story, but it was quite noticeable, and that's probably the only like real criticism I have of the story. But overall, Yeah, if you want something that is well written, mostly fast paced, has a great dark spooky vibe, is perfect for anyone who loves horror or spooky things, then totally read this. I mean, this is kind of a classic for a reason, and I still think it's underrated. And yeah, I'm happy I read it. It didn't blow me away, but I liked it. I liked it, and I'm happy I read it, and I recommend it. I think you should too. Also, I know that there's this book called Hunger Stone that is kind of a retelling of Carmilla, so I'm excited to get to that because I've heard good things about it. So the next book that I want to talk about is Rolling in the Deep by Mira Grant. This is a book about sirens. Essentially, it's this scientific crew who is working together with a TV show. They want to do like a mockumentary about mermaids, and they go out into the Mariana Trench, and they end up actually finding mermaids. And the mermaids are not the cute little Disney mermaids that you might think of. So yeah, this one had a lot going for it. It sets up a novel, so it kind of works as a standalone a little bit, but you can also tell that it's really setting the stage for the main novel. And yeah, so there's a lot to like here. The first thing that comes to mind is that there's a lot of science talk, and as there are a lot of scientists on the ship, and it's dealing with taking samples from the salt water and exploring what's out there. The breakdowns of like the technology and stuff, I enjoyed that. There's also a diverse cast of characters because a lot of these characters are from the television network. So you have people who are just a bit weird. You have this group of women who they are fake mermaids. They dress up and swim around in the water and to do shows and stuff like that. And so they had their very quirky personalities. Then you had the more passionate scientists who are very like serious and dedicated about their work. You had some diversity. There was a character who he's like the co-captain, and he's deaf, so he has a lot of sign language, which was interesting. You don't really see that a lot in books, and that was cool. I liked it. I like what they did with that. They do something else with his sign language later on in the story that I won't mention, but it's interesting. Yeah, the story really is a satire on television and all that. How they have all this money, but instead of funding scientists to go out and do their research, they give the money to this mockumentary crew because and it's like, to the mainstream public, entertainment is like more valued than science, so it does shed some light poking fun at that. The pacing itself was interesting, that it's very slow in the beginning because it's introducing the crew and they're having like their work moments where they're all talking to each other. And then, it slowly builds up and becomes more tense. And then once everything hits the fan, then it just kind of goes into hyperdrive, and the last, 30-20% of this book is just nonstop, like go, 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 go. So the pacing is inconsistent, but it works. I guess one could say that the ending, is quite sudden, but it is what it is. I didn't really think so. I kind of liked it, that it just ramped up a bit. And yeah, there's a lot of gore at the end of this story. It's very bloody, and so if you're squeamish about that, obviously you're probably not going to like this. But I liked it. I've noticed that I love gore in books. I've never read a splatterpunk book before, but I can feel myself moving closer to that section of storytelling. Yeah, I might do a splatterpunk video coming up. I'll have to dive into that. Yeah, I guess my only criticism about this is that this is framed as like a documentary from the future, from a couple of years in the future. So it literally tells you in the blurb of the story, and it tells you early on too that everybody dies. And I I don't know. I just feel like that's a spoiler. I feel like the book shouldn't have been framed that way. I think that just going in with fresh eyes and wondering what the mermaids are going to be like and all that stuff, or if they're even going to find them, you know, all of that, it would have kept the suspense and the tension and the curiosity. But just telling you early on that, oh, everybody dies, I don't know, it kind of took the air out of it all. It's the way that the author wanted to frame the book, but I kind of personally disagree with it. But it's their work, their art. Yeah, and that's all I really have to say for this one. So the last one is Shallow Graves by Callie Wallace. This, I don't know, I think I would still recommend it, especially for anybody who's kind of in a spooky mood. But for me personally, it was my least favorite out of these three. It's about this girl who was killed, and then a year later, for some reason, she is, like brought back to life, and she crawls out of her grave, and she's like an undead, and she's just wondering what happens, like why, like who killed her, why is she, alive again, what to do about it. So a lot of the story is kind of her wandering around, just figuring out like what now, like why am I like this, and it's really about her mourning the loss of her future as a human. It goes into all of her flashbacks and all of her dreams and aspirations that she was going to do that she can no longer do. She can't, like, even though she's technically not dead anymore, she can't go and see her family because they think she's dead, stuff like that. So this story opens up a whole supernatural world with, ghouls and this and that. And I don't know, it's good, but it was also kind of meandering. There's this whole subplot that is interesting, but it feels like a side quest or something, and it all feels kind of like a distraction to what should have been the main idea of the story. And I don't know, this whole story is a standalone book, but it feels like it really, really feels like this should have been the first book in like a 5 to even 10 book series or something like that. Like some long story about this character, and this is only the first book to do the setup. It just feels so unfinished. Like there's so many different plot threads and little story beats that once you flip that last page, they're completely unresolved. It's just like, what is going on here? On Goodreads, this book has it's like a 3.5 out of 5, and you can kind of tell why. Like it's not bad. It just feels completely unfinished. I don't know if the author was planning on making this a series or not, but yeah. But the characters are cool, I don't have any complaints about the writing or anything like that. It's mainly that this is a good spooky story with good writing, but it just feels unfinished. That's basically it. Oh, another thing that I forgot to mention is that she has like this ability where she can tell who has murdered before. Like, she can just look at people, and anybody who has ever killed somebody in the past, then they have like a dark shadow that's kind of coming off of them. So she can just tell, like, oh, you're a killer, you're a killer, you're a killer. And, it kind of goes into that, how there's probably more killers than you think around us, and it's not always like malicious. Like some people are just straight up murderers, but some people it was self-defense, stuff like that. So it does kind of explore that a little bit. But yeah, if you want something spooky, then this is it's right up there for a good, like, fall Halloween-y vibe, but it's nothing really amazing. I give it like a light recommendation. And yeah, I mean, those are the 3 books that I read. They're all very, macabre and supernatural, and yeah, I hope that you read them and that you enjoy them. And if you have read them before, what were your thoughts? I would like to know. And yeah, I hope everything's going well, and I'll see you next time. Peace.